If you have a 401k or really any investments, you've probably had that feeling lately that the markets are a little shaky. But what if I told you that our entire economy might be more like a house of cards, and that the government might be holding a very surprising ace up its sleeve? Today, we're going to look at the hidden cracks in our financial system and a pretty wild theory about how gold could be the ultimate escape hatch. Let's get into it.
So, how does that even happen? How does one little domino manage to topple an entire economy? Well, it's not really just one event, is it? It's a chain reaction. The whole system is way more connected and way more sensitive than you'd probably guess. So, what's that first little push that could set the whole thing off? Take a look at this number. It seems small, right? Well, this is from the 2008 financial crisis. Less than 5% of all mortgage loans in the US went bad, and that's all it took to trigger a global meltdown. It felt like the whole world was falling apart, but it all started with just this tiny fraction. That right there is the power of the domino effect. Okay, so that brings us to today. The problem isn't subprime loans anymore. Nope. Now there are brand new pressures building up just below the surface, in places you might not even be looking. Let's take a look at what some of these new wobbly dominoes are.
The secret ingredient, the thing that really makes this whole domino effect possible, is a concept called leverage. And it's pretty much the foundation for understanding everything else we're about to cover.
So what is leverage really? Well, put simply, it's just using borrowed money to make a really big investment. Think about buying a house, for example. Let's say you put down $50,000 on a $500,000 home. If that home's value drops by just 10%, poof, 100% of your investment is gone. Just like that. Leverage can make you rich for sure, but it can also wipe you out completely. Now, I want you to imagine that same principle, but for the entire economy. The homeowner, they've got a mortgage. The bank that gave them that mortgage, they're leveraged too. And that big investment fund that bought the mortgage from the bank, oh yeah, they're also leveraged. And at the very top of this whole tower, you've got the government, which is the most leveraged of all. The entire system is just layers and layers of debt, one on top of the other.
So, where's the first crack starting to appear in this massive tower of debt? Well, it's in a place most people have probably never even heard of, the world of private credit. It's kind of like a shadow banking system, operating way outside the normal rules and regulations of the banks we all know.
Yeah, so unlike a traditional bank, which has all sorts of rules and oversight, these private credit funds, they operate with almost no regulation and very little transparency. They're making private loans to private companies, and here's the kicker. The money they're using, it isn't even their own. And the scale of this thing is just staggering. This market has exploded to nearly $3 trillion in just a decade. So where'd all that money come from? Well, it came from your money. It's from pension funds, insurance companies, and retirement accounts like 401k. And look, this isn't some fringe conspiracy theory. The CEO of the largest bank in America is sounding the alarm. I mean, when the people at the absolute top of the financial system start dropping quotes like this, it is probably worth paying attention. And the stress is already starting to show. When nervous investors started asking for their money back, these massive funds, they couldn't pay. They had to literally freeze withdrawals. It is a classic sign of a liquidity crisis. Basically, the money is trapped and nobody can get it out. Okay, so you've got these cracks forming in the hidden parts of the financial system, but what about the pressures we can see? The ones that affect our wallets every single day? Well, beyond private credit, two classic recession indicators are flashing bright red: the price of oil and a weakening job market. History shows a really clear pattern here. Major spikes in the price of oil have come right before nearly every major recession. It makes sense, right? When oil gets expensive, everything gets expensive. And businesses start cutting costs, which a lot of the time means cutting jobs. And with all the geopolitical tensions right now, oil prices are on the rise again. But this time, the situation is actually uniquely dangerous. Our emergency oil reserve is low. The job market is definitely slowing down, and for the first time ever, AI is threatening high-paying white-collar jobs, the very people who pay the most in taxes. So all of this brings us to the biggest player in the whole game, the U.S. government. And folks, it is caught in a very serious financial trap, with absolutely no easy way out. And this is where it gets really crazy. For every single dollar the government collects in taxes, it has already spent $1.20 on just three things:
Social Security and Medicare, interest on the national debt, and defense. That means everything else, roads, schools, national parks, you name it, is funded entirely by taking on more debt.
All right, now let's bring the Federal Reserve into the picture. The Fed basically has two main jobs, and they often clash with each other: keep people employed and keep prices stable. This is what sets up their impossible dilemma.
Okay, so here's the scenario. A recession hits. The Fed's typical playbook says, cut interest rates to get the economy going again. But with oil prices so high, cutting rates would send inflation through the roof. So they have to choose. Do they fight unemployment or do they fight inflation? Because they can't do both at the same time. They are, for all intents and purposes, in checkmate. Any move they make to solve one problem just makes the other one worse. It's a trap, and there is no obvious escape. So, is there any way out of this trap? Well, there's this fascinating theory that the solution might be, of all things, an accounting trick from the 1970s. I know, it sounds strange, but when the system gets this stressed out, sometimes policymakers have to get a little creative. Okay, so here's the core idea. The U.S. government holds 8,000 tons of gold, but on its official books, it's valued at just $42 an ounce, a price set way back in 1973. The market price today? It's over $5,000 an ounce. So the government could simply update the price on its books, it's called revaluation, and instantly create over $1 trillion out of thin air to strengthen its balance sheet. And if this sounds like some crazy newfangled idea, it's not. It's actually been done 3 times before. FDR did it during the Great Depression, and Nixon did it twice in the 70s. Each time it was used as an emergency measure to stabilize the economy when pretty much all other options were off the table. It's a tool that's been in the playbook for almost 100 years, just sitting there, waiting to be used again. But here's the really clever part. This isn't just about creating money out of nothing. It's about breaking the Fed's checkmate. The U.S. could offer to pay for oil with this newly highly valued gold instead of with dollars. That could bring down oil prices, which would lower inflation, and finally give the Fed the breathing room it needs to fight a recession without causing hyperinflation. So that's the big question, isn't it? In this incredibly complex world of finance, AI, and digital currency, could the answer to our biggest economic problems really be a lump of yellow metal? It's a wild theory, for sure. But in a system that's built on a tower of debt, maybe the oldest tricks in the book are the best ones. What do you think?